Over the last decade, the Democratic Socialist label has exploded into mainstream American politics, championed by high-profile figures like Bernie Sanders and a new wave of progressive legislators. But there's a paradox here. When asked what their ideal society looks like, these self-identified socialists frequently point to Nordic countries like Denmark or Sweden, nations that are actually robust, highly competitive capitalist economies. This creates a major problem for public understanding. The media, political critics, and even voters now use the terms social democracy and democratic socialism completely interchangeably, as if they describe the exact same political philosophy. While both factions fight for strong welfare programs today, they work from entirely incompatible blueprints for the final destination of the economy. Understanding the difference requires looking past the short-term policies they agree on. To separate the two, you have to uncover their opposing answers to one central question: who should own the economy? To see why their policies overlap today, we have to look at their shared DNA. Both movements grew out of the exact same 19th century European labor struggles and socialist intellectual circles, heavily influenced by thinkers like Karl Marx. But early in their development, a distinct branch of these movements drew a line in the sand. They united firmly around the rejection of authoritarianism, explicitly condemning Soviet-style centralized dictatorships. Instead, they established a shared baseline. They agreed that political power had to be won fairly through parliamentary democracy, protected by civil liberties, and used to empower the working class through organized collective bargaining. Because both groups spent over a century fighting side by side for basic democratic rights and workplace safety, their distinct long-term goals easily blur together in the modern public imagination. Social democracy is best understood as the regulator philosophy. When you look at the modern Nordic model, you're looking at social democracy's most successful real-world application. Their operating premise is straightforward. Market capitalism is a powerful, unmatched engine for generating wealth, but if left entirely alone, it produces extreme inequality and leaves vulnerable people behind. As this diagram illustrates, the social democratic solution is to let private individuals own businesses and generate profits, but use the state to heavily tax a portion of that wealth. That tax revenue is then redistributed back to the public. It pays for universal health care, free education, and a comprehensive social safety net for every citizen. Social democracy is a framework for taming and managing capitalism, ensuring the wealth it generates is channeled back into the public interest, rather than dismantling the system. Democratic socialists look at that exact same Nordic model and argue that mere regulation of a capitalist market is inherently insufficient. Their critique is based on power. They argue that as long as a small class of private capitalists owns the economy, those owners will eventually amass enough wealth to buy political influence and dismantle those hard-won welfare programs. Their alternative solution is economic democracy. They want to take the democratic voting process we use to elect our politicians and expand it directly into our workplaces and financial institutions. This chart highlights the mechanical difference. Economic democracy means transitioning away from top-down corporate hierarchies and into worker cooperatives, where employees vote on company decisions, alongside establishing public banking and democratic ownership funds. Democratic socialists prioritize relocating the power of ownership itself, moving beyond the mere redistribution of market profits. Their ultimate goal is to gradually transcend capitalism and replace it with a system owned and managed directly by workers and the public. In the trenches of daily politics, you will frequently see members of both groups forming pragmatic coalitions. They work together to pass immediate reforms, like raising the minimum wage or funding green infrastructure. Keep this core distinction in your mental toolkit. Social democracy attempts to manage and save capitalism, while democratic socialism works to gradually replace it. The next time a politician pitches a massive new economic policy, you can use a simple litmus test to figure out which camp they belong to. Ask yourself, does this policy aim to redistribute the wealth of a capitalist market, or does it try to change who owns the market entirely? The answer reveals the true ideological endgame of its sponsor.